Magnet television.
Magnet television.
Magnet television.
You're watching Magnet television because what else are you going to do?
Hi, this is Josh Caterer. You might say Josh Caterer of Smoking Popes, but I'm also just Josh Caterer of Josh Caterer. And I can prove it. Look at this. This is an album I just put out called the Hideout Sessions. And there's my name right there. When I tell people what my favorite song is, I usually describe it in terms of the best song, the best written melody, the most beautifully poetic lyrics combined with the most emotionally effective, best crafted melody. And I would often make the case that song is Stardust by Hoagy Carmichael. But if I'm talking what is my favorite song just in terms of it's the most fun to listen to and it makes me happy, I would say that Teenage Lobotomy by the Ramones is my favorite song. And so I guess my answer would have to be that my favorite song is some combination of those two songs, or it's a tie between those two songs. And I think if you look at the entire totality of my musical output during my life, you will see a perpetual war between those two songs taking place. I have had my life changed by albums several times, but I would say that the album that had the effect of really pushing me toward becoming a songwriter myself probably was the album Blood and Chocolate by Elvis Costello and the Attractions. At that time, I was a fan of a variety of different genres of music, and it seemed like when that album came out, and that's when I really got into Elvis Costello in earnest, what I was hearing was a lot of the musical influences and inspirations from all these different places being brought together in a way that recognized the validity of all of those, but wasn't tied to any of them. His music in general, but particularly on that album, it has hints of the classic songwriting, from the era of the Gershwins and Irving Berlin and all those kind of great songwriters. And you can tell that he's an appreciator of jazz and soul and all these different genres, and he's bringing little hints of that into his music, but also primarily coming out of the genre that could be described as punk. I mean, when the Elvis Costello and the Attractions started out, they were basically, punk or new wave or however you would classify that. But the sensibilities of punk music, the kind of edge and anger of punk was definitely present in that album, but there was a level of thoughtfulness and a kind of an intellectual component to the songwriting and the lyrics that was really interesting. And the way that he put himself forward as a vocalist, particularly on that album, it's a very vocal-forward album that makes it very personal and very accessible. You can really connect with him, I think, on that record. And listening to that impacted me and inspired me and challenged me to think about those possibilities for myself. What could I do with songwriting if I didn't want to be sort of restrained by any labels or fit into any boxes, but just wanted to take all the best things from all the music that I love and try to put them together in a way which was uniquely me. Like that's what he had done there. And it got me excited about the possibilities of what would that look like if I tried to do it. And so I think the time that I spent listening to that record and investing in it and studying in it and marinating in it had as much of an impact on me as any music I've ever heard. And it's a brilliant record, and I love it. I believe the year was 1988. Iggy Pop had just come out with an album called Instinct, and he was touring for that album, and he came to Chicago and played at a place called the Metro. And I went to that show. I was a teenager at the time, and it was a completely transformative experience for me. I think in part because, this was back before the internet. So I had seen pictures of Iggy Pop, but I had never seen any video footage of him actually moving around. So I didn't know what to expect. I had been listening to his music for years, and just looking at pictures of him, like on the cover of Raw Power and New Values, and all those pictures of him kind of contorting himself. But I didn't have a concept of what the actual animated Iggy Pop was going to look like in person. And so his band comes out, and they take the stage and they start playing, and they're like jamming for, I don't know, a minute or so. And then Iggy comes running from backstage and immediately dives into the crowd. And my brother and I are there, like right in front. We're right down front. So he basically dives on top of us. And so my first exposure to Iggy Pop was him physically leaping on top of me, and I'm like touching him and holding him up and passing him around. And that was so exhilarating. And the probably the top three most exciting concerts I've ever seen in my life have all been Iggy Pop concerts. But that one in particular, just because I think where I was at in my life, a young, impressionable lad, and to have my mind so thoroughly blown by a performance, and to have this totally mind-expanding experience of what a live performance can be, the way that energy can be exchanged between a performer and an audience, and how musicians and artists can present something that becomes such a cathartic and connective, memorable sort of milestone in your life. The fact that a concert can do that it sort of changed everything for me. And so I think that's always going to be the best concert that I've ever seen. we played a New Year's Eve show. Can't remember the year. I'm going to say 2012, right around there maybe. We played a New Year's Eve show. We headlined a club in Philadelphia on New Year's Eve. And I was personally responsible for the countdown. The 10, 9, 8, 7, Happy New Year countdown. Because I was sort of at the helm there. I was at the mic. I was the lead singer. So I was supposed to keep an eye on this. I had a little clock on stage and everything. But I missed it. And I just noticed that everybody in the audience seemed to be looking at their watches, and they just started sort of celebrating that the new year had happened, but I'm just up there still, singing. And so as soon as I saw that, though, I look at the clock and I'm like, oh, hey, Happy New Year. And so I had people do a countdown because I was adamant that a unified collective countdown led by me was going to happen. So I was like, let's do this. All right, everybody, 10, 9. But it had already happened, so it was stupid. I should have just forgot the whole thing and just kept playing. But I didn't. I created an awkward moment. And now, whenever I think about it, I cringe. That is the musical act that I'm most embarrassed by. This is Josh Caterer, and you're watching Magnet Television.
Cine.